Welcome everybody to the City of Madison Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We've got a full house today, so if everybody could just bear with us and be patient, we'll work through this as best as we can. If we could have a roll call to start the meeting, please.
Joel Storm,
Present.
Carl Eaglin,
Present.
Patrick Tevenaugh,
Present.
Mike Armstrong, Jerry Ralston,
Present.
Josh Wilbur, Van Crafton,
Here.
Zach McLaughlin, Rick Ferris.
All right, so we have a quorum, so we will proceed with the applications on our agenda for the night. And before we get started, I think our counsel, Joe Jenner, would have some comments.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of remind me again, I'm sitting in for Mr. Sharp, but I want to kind of explain what the process is, what the purpose is of tonight. But we are asking, or the applicant is asking for a change from,
So there's 6 applications. 3 are a zoning request to move from low density residential R4 to agriculture, and the other 3 are rezoning requests from residential agriculture RA to agriculture.
and the applicant here is Ian Evans, and as I understand it, we have received consent by all of the property owners to allow Mr. Evans to make this application. And this, again, is an application to change that zoning classification, and it's a request to the Plan Commission to get a recommendation to give to the City Council, who would actually eventually make the change. So this board actually doesn't, they don't actually make the change. They just give either a affirmative recommendation or a negative recommendation, or they can give no recommendation, but it will pass on to City Council, where there will be another public hearing held and notices sent out, and where property owners can come and make their request or talk to their City Council people or whatever. So, but today we are here to have this, and I guess we'll just start with the applicant.
Just because we have overflow and they can only hear you if you talk directly into the microphone, please make sure to do that.
All right, thank you. If Mr. Evans could approach, and would the commission like to handle all of these applications in one discussion, or should we handle them individually? Should we handle these as one bulk of all 6 applications, since they're the same subject
I
matter?
don't see any reason why not, unless the board decides to parse out. And the other thing I will say, just from the outset, so that everybody is clear, in order to get a favorable recommendation from this board, it is a vote. It is a majority vote of all of the board, not just members present. And so tonight it would be a unanimous vote of all of these people here.
You're saying it would need to be a unanimous vote for it to be
Basically sent on with an affirmative.
otherwise we'd have to wait for the rest of the board.
No.
Oh, okay,
It's a one-shot deal. That's
Gotcha.
why I tell you that at the outset.
Gotcha,
That way,
gotcha.
if you decide you say, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that, then you
So
can.
not a majority of the ones here, you gotta have
That's right.
follow. Gotcha. No worries.
So one vote can be a complete no for the,
One vote would get you a negative. No recommendation.
no recommendation. Okay.
Order, do you have a proxy situation, or? There is no proxy. You can't have a unanimous 5/2. No, it is you have to have a majority of the entire board.
So this is a 9-member plan commission, so we do have a quorum of 5.
Upon discussion with members of the commission, I think if there's no other objections, we'd like to handle these applications in 2 groups. One for the parcels currently zoned low-density residential R4, and one for the parcels zoned residential agriculture, in case there are any any questions that come up between the two zoning classifications. So the first applications to discuss on our agenda are items number 1, 2, and 5, which would be PCRZ 24-1, 24-2, and 24-5. Locations being 3247 West Deputy Pike, 3201 plus West Deputy Pike, 2601 plus West Deputy Pike, 3247 West Deputy Pike, 3000 plus West Chicken Run Road, and 3621 North 300 West. So, Mr. Evans, if you
Yeah.
could tell us about this project and this request, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the brief introduction. My name is Ian Evans. I'm with IFA Power, also known as Cedar Holdco, which is the applicant filed on behalf of the landowners that own the land that you were speaking of. We filed these rezoning applications. I think everyone here is wanting to talk about potential development on this land. Just to reiterate, what we're here to vote on, or not vote on, but to provide recommendation on is just the rezoning to agriculture. There's separate hearings with the Board of Zoning Appeals and things like that we'll have to go through to actually approve the project. Our intention is to rezone the land from low-density residential to agriculture, and then the res ag stuff to agriculture as well. For full transparency, we are trying to develop a project there, and this is the first step in the process. However, the land is currently being used as agriculture, and that's how it's taxed. And so we're requesting a rezone to better reflect, essentially, the current use of the land. I'm happy to answer any questions about solar development or anything like that. I don't necessarily, there are separate discussions that are going to happen both publicly with open houses and things like that we'll host prior to any conditional use permit applications or approvals. But if there's any questions or anything like that on the project, I'm happy to answer those. But for right now, we want to request the rezoning to agriculture to better reflect what it's currently used as.
All right, thank you. Do any members of the commission have questions or comments?
How much power are you expecting to produce with the solar panels with the 1,000 acres that you're talking about?
Yes, sir. If we're granted a conditional use permit approval and things like that, and we go forward with building, it'll be 150 megawatts.
150 megawatts.
That would be per day.
So you're talking about 10 megawatts an hour, approximately. Your fire protection of this kind of system, of course, you're going to tap into a existing power feed of about 345,000 watts, correct?
It's 138
That's
kilovolts.
138 going
The
through there.
substation is 138.
It goes down to the Marble Hill substation, which is
It does not. It goes to the Duke Madison substation.
Okay, and this power could go any place.
When you put it into the grid,
Yes.
it stays within Duke's system, but it could go anywhere.
Okay, using a transformer
That's right.
and a bunch of banks of batteries for storage of power, you're going to have a very strong fire protection system
Yeah,
in case something happens with the transformer
Sure.
or something happens with the battery pack.
sure. To be clear, the battery storage facility, which is also us, located just north of the Madison 138 kV substation, has been fully permitted. We have an economic development agreement with the county, and then it's been fully permitted with the city. In addition to that, we've had meetings with emergency management personnel, fire chief, things like that. We've actually drafted commitments that we've made to the project to ensure fire safety. We'll continue to do that for solar, albeit there's really not a lot of risk outside of like you said, the transformers and things like that. The battery, that seemed to be, when the project was permitted, kind of a hot topic for the battery. And so we had extensive and continue to have extensive conversations about best practices for managing that. And again, we have to provide an emergency management training program. We have to do that once a year. We have to come out and train the firefighters. We have a list of things that we've committed to for building it, and then we also have a list of things that we've committed to do as the project continues through its operation. So that's for the battery. The solar, we could certainly do something similar for that. Fire risk doesn't typically come up for solar, but if there are concerns, then we can talk about what we can do about that later on.
This will not be manned 24 hours a day, correct? Once you're up and running, there'll be 0 employees.
There would be 1 to 2 permanent full-time employees, but there would not be manned per se 24/7.
So
Like
no,
there won't be.
no around the clock observation or safety checks or anything of that.
We will have virtual monitoring. We'll be in touch. We'll have a point of contact with the emergency management people, firefighters, things like that. So if anything happens, they could be able to contact us.
But nobody on a 1,000-acre site.
Not 24/7, but there'd be 1 to 2 full-time jobs.
Okay. Go ahead, somebody else go.
Would those 1 to 2 full-time employees be based in Jefferson County, or would they be remotely based?
No, they'd be here. They'd be on site. There's certain things that have to be done with any power plant. There's maintenance and things like that. We'll have an operations and maintenance building that they'll work out of actually on site. So they'll be here. And they'll also be part of the battery storage. It'll all be one.
How long, if you know this, how long have the current properties been used as agricultural?
That would be a question for the landowners.
Okay, significantly long period of time.
And I think the continued use, even outside of any potential development, is going to continue to be agriculture. I can speak pretty confidently that they would continue to use it as agriculture.
If we could, in order to keep the meeting orderly somewhat, if we could wait for comments until after the presentation is finished, everybody will have a chance to speak if they wish, but we'll.
So I'll ask that question directly, just because that was what I was about to ask as well. I noticed that it said in there, in that paperwork, that they continue to use this land as agriculture. That is a valid question. By what means or methods will we be able to continue to use that agriculturally?
I'm saying that regardless of the project, they would want the land zoned as agriculture because that's its use right now. So I'm not saying that it continues to be agriculture. Now, it's no secret that in order to get a conditional use permit, the land needs to be agricultural so that we can do the solar development. But regardless, even if we don't do the solar development, the land is still going to be used as agriculture, is what I was saying.
Yeah, it just sounds like a distinction without a difference in that aspect. So I think that's why I was asking the question, just to clarify for people that
Sure.
they could understand the effect of that. Thank you.
Yes.
But if this is allowed to go through,
Mhm.
it will never come back to
It-
where you could plant soybeans or corn,
It
correct?
absolutely would, yeah. So there's
Will
steel,
not.
for the construction of the site, it
Right.
is steel I-beams that are driven onto the ground. There's no permanent concrete, there's no permanent gravel, none of that is happening. It's a steel I-beam that's driven into the ground, there's a pole that sits on top of it, and the solar panels clip onto those poles. Now, there will be an operations and maintenance building that will be gravel that likely will not return to agricultural use, but you're talking about a very, very, very small plot of land. We have agreed, even with the battery farm, and we'll do the same thing with the solar. Indiana statute has set aside specific standards for decommissioning of these sites. We have to abide by that, but we will also enter into a decommissioning agreement with the city to decommission the site and make sure that it's restored back to its original use. I recognize that there's this thought that it's like this crazy invasive thing. When you go to a construction site, when you go to one of these facilities that's operating, it is steel I-beams driven into the ground, and then there's panels that sit on the racking system, and then there's local native grasses that are planted underneath it. And it just sits there for the life of the project. When those steel I-beams come back out, the land can 100% be restored back to its agricultural use, and we intend to do that fully. Indiana state statute has said that we have to do that, and we will agree to do that.
What's the projected lifespan of these panels?
Yeah, I mean, who knows where the efficiency goes on them? It could be quicker if the efficiency gains quicker than the cost of what it would cost to replace them. But our intended useful life of the project is 30 years. In order to build one of these things, we have to have a long-term power purchase agreement with someone who's going to buy the power. That's at minimum probably 15 to 20 years. And then once we have that, we would be able to build, assuming we have all the permits and things like that. And then once that's in place, the power purchase agreement project's built, the grid's reliant on the power, and so shutting it down is not really an option. We'll just continue to operate through the life of that, and then we would hope to sign an extension to that contract, which would get us to about that 30-year mark.
So would your corporation be providing a bond of some sort to ensure there's funding for the decommissioning of this site in 30 years?
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of the decommissioning obligations. We have agreed to decommissioning obligations, including security with the landowners in the lease agreements. It's mandated by state statute, and we'll sign a separate agreement with the city to make sure that that money is set aside in a bond.
Around your batteries, will there be a containment area, or will it just be sitting around the top of the ground, just like your panels? The
When
reason
you
I'm
say-
asking this, let's say you have a fail in your battery, and the acid leaks into the ground. You're not gonna get that ground back, are you?
On the battery storage facility, there's precautions for those things. They're contained
Is
in
there a
the
containment
containers.
area around the batteries? Is it setting in a trough, a concrete trough? Something that will maintain all the fluids and liquids involved with the battery?
Yes, they are sitting in trailers, like what amounts to an 18-wheeler tractor trailer. Nothing that would leak out of that.
Nothing can leak out, so they're leak-proof, guaranteed.
Not going to make guarantees on that, but that's the intention.
That's the intentions, but
Yeah, and to be clear, the batteries are not part of any of this. The batteries have been fully permitted separate. There's different.
you don't have to have a power source for these panels?
No. You don't have to have a power source for the panels.
Yes.
The sun.
Well, yes, but there's no batteries there
No.
to recharge?
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. It adds optimization to what we can provide whoever's buying the power, but it certainly, you don't have to have batteries attached to it.
So the electricity generated at the site's fed directly into the power grid?
Yeah, and
or to your
just for
battery?
clarity, the electricity is generated at a low voltage. It's stepped up to a medium voltage, run over to where it's then at the transformer that you mentioned, and then it's high voltage for like 200 feet over to the substation as the plan currently sits.
What sort of, with this plan, what will the exterior perimeter of this site look like, and what will you be doing to shield any
Yeah.
adjoining parcels?
Thank you. So, on the, not the Madison zoning ordinance, but part of the Jefferson County zoning ordinance is that they required a landscape buffer. This is not in Jefferson County, but it's in Jefferson County, but it's not subject to their zoning ordinance. The City of Madison zoning ordinance didn't contemplate this. But we knew that was going to be an issue, and we spoke with some local people, the mayor and things, and they definitely said that was going to be an issue, the visual impact. So what we did is we have a landscape plan that I believe was submitted, not with these applications, but it will be submitted with a conditional use permit application. And so we've agreed to do landscape buffering in any areas that you have roads, homes, or anything where there's not natural vegetative buffer. If there's already a natural tree line that's blocking view, we won't take out trees and add new trees, but any places that there are not, there will be a landscape buffer that we are agreeing to with the city to make sure that the visual impacts are minimum, especially on State Road 7 as you drive in, as that was a major issue. As this is west of State Road 7, as you drive in, we really want to make sure we're blocking the view, as that was kind of a point that the mayor pointed out.
And how far from any property lines would the solar panels be placed at minimum?
150 feet, but then there would be the buffer in between the 150 feet, the visual buffer with the trees and things like that.
The fluid contained in the panels, what is that? What kind
I'm
of
sorry?
There's a fluid that works inside the solar panels. What is that? Is it a glycol system?
There's a silicone that's inside the panels.
And what would prevent a huge hailstorm? We have them. Would that damage your solar panels to where they might leak?
they're not going to leak when they have hail damage, but would it destroy them to where they're not efficient anymore? A giant hailstorm, yes, it would destroy them. Now, there are ways to prevent that. I think everyone has seen, there was an event in Texas, I think, earlier this year. You can stow them in a way that limits that. You can
Right.
stow them like this rather than flat so they're not exposed. But yeah, hailstorm,
I mean, that
Not
could be kind of just a big debris field after a hailstorm, correct?
I would disagree that it would be a big debris field. The panels would just be broken on the surface, and that's it.
You don't think it would shatter, end up on the ground?
I do not.
No floods running out,
I do not.
but there's no guarantees.
Is there a plan in place to replace any broken panels or, continue that operation as it's briefed today?
Absolutely. That's how we make our money. So sitting there not generating electricity is not really doing any good for us. So we would be the first ones out there to replace those panels.
And would you be responsible for the disposal of those panels as well?
We would.
Is your organization owned by a U.S. company, or are there any foreign?
There's no foreign.
owned
We're based in
companies?
Austin, Texas.
Okay,
foreign.
and there's no, you're not a subsidiary?
No.
You're the company?
We have a private equity backer that's American, that's in the U.S., but our company is an American company based out of Austin, Texas, with no foreign ownership, no foreign entities involved with us at all.
Okay.
Could there be?
No.
You don't think a foreign company could buy in to your company? Never, ever? Could China own this?
Could China own it?
Yes, they could.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen
I
it
know,
happen.
I haven't either, but China's involved in a lot of things.
Understood.
And when it comes to power, there's some,
To be fair, I think it would be extremely difficult for us to ever permit anything if we were owned by a Chinese entity. So I don't think that would ever be in the best interest of our company, or any foreign entity for that matter. So our intention is always going to be to stay U.S. And be local.
I'll be honest, 1,000 acres to give up prime ground in Indiana, it's never gonna come back. Never.
Yeah, I would disagree, but
Give up 1,000 acres out there in that area. A bushel after bushel of corn and soybeans and all that for 200 years. To give it up for this, I'm having a hard time with it, I'll be honest.
Just to, didn't want to interrupt. We do have a clipboard with a sheet going around. Please just make sure that keeps going, if you don't mind, please. So, sorry to interrupt.
And I understand that the topic, as you're directing it, it pertains to the zoning, okay? But how we come to our conclusions and decisions are often directed by the ancillary effects of that. So, some of these questions still are prudent and relevant to this because they pertain to how we come to that conclusion. So, as we ask these, just understand that we're trying to get as much information inside as this, and I'd also ask the public to understand too that this is moving through a series of processes too, where we're going to expose more and more information so we can come to this decision based on the facts. So that's really how we have to go about this, because there's two minds of it, and there's pros and cons to each. So, with that being said, is there a future plan to expand those solar operations?
no. We have a 150 megawatt, what is called a queue position. So you file with there's an operator that is the regulatory agency over all of the utilities in the Mid-Continent region. It's called MISO, Mid-Continent ISO. So they, you have to file with them, and you have to go through a long 4-year, 5-year process where you're posting increasing amounts of security. We've gone through that process. Our interconnection rights are only for 150 megawatts. We do not have any other interconnection rights here. Without those, you cannot build anything.
Given that it takes 4 years to ramp that up, so we were somewhere in this process 4 years ago contemplating this, or how did that, can you give us some enlightenment on how this has come to fruition thus
We
far?
bought the project from a company called Open Road Renewables in 2022, we may have closed on it early 2023, but it was late 2022. They had permitted the battery storage facility, and then we decided that we wanted to build the solar with the batteries, which you can do given the interconnection rights at 150 megawatts. And so starting mid 2023 is when I started approaching landowners and then began that process. It doesn't do any good to come to a plan commission hearing or submit plans if we don't even have leases negotiated with landowners, because if the landowners tell us no, ultimately, we don't have a project. So that's mainly where we've been working, and then we've also been doing extensive environmental engineering studies to make sure that we can actually build the site before we present it to you guys. So we've been doing that for the last year and a half.
Thank you.
Indiana code requires that plan commissions consider proposals like this, and we, this is a quote from the code, "We pay reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan, the current conditions and character of current structures and uses in each district, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction, and responsible growth and development." I think this project, while it is interesting, I think it can come into conflict with some of what we need to consider as part of this proposal. What sort of studies or information can you provide with regards to the conservation of property values in the jurisdiction, especially for properties immediately adjacent to this project?
There have been extensive studies done. I do not have them on hand, but I can provide them to the commission if it'll be helpful for your decision making. I'm happy to do that.
And what do those studies say?
There's a study out of NC State, basically that the effects of the solar farms on adjacent property values, and this is not even taking into context having the landscape buffering, that there's a negligible impact to property values. Now, when you add the landscape buffer, I think that just further reiterates you can't see it, and it's going to be a negligible impact. Those are the studies. I can send those to you upon request.
Would you like to have a solar farm next to your home?
I don't believe I would mind it. I don't live in the country. I live in Savannah, Georgia, not in a rural area. It hasn't been an opportunity that's presented to me.
Thank you. One other concern I have with this, and this is a kind of a practical concern from the standpoint of how the Plan Commission has considered zoning changes in the past. This, to me, would become spot zoning, and the city has never looked favorably upon spot zoning in the past, going back as far as I understand. And so this project, by rezoning these parcels, some from R4, some from RA to Ag, would leave little enclaves of other parcels where folks live that would remain zone. It would turn our zoning map, it would look like a puzzle for a visual perspective there, and it makes it very difficult for us to plan future uses within the buffer zone, and it makes our approach to zoning and frankly even having zoning in this buffer zone kind of useless, in my opinion, because now we go from having large, well planned out sections of land that are planned and zoned according to what is there in many cases, into a mismatch of property that makes it difficult to use. We have several developments. You've got the subdivision there along Borcherding Road. This body just approved a new subdivision that will be going in on Borcherding Road at the corner of Deputy Pike, across from the Exton houses there. Looking at this parcel map, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, looks like perhaps 10 other parcels that would retain their extant zoning and now be surrounded by a new zoning use that I don't know if it would be in the best interest of us to consider this change based on that fact alone. Do any other members of the commission have any comments or questions?
I think there needs to be particular attention paid to the strategic analysis of how we develop this land, the longevity of this land, and future considerations on how that's gonna change how that land can be further developed. Right now, I feel as if we have opinions, but we're in the absence of a lot of supporting details that we would need to bring an informed decision to rezone, simply for the fact that there's so many gaps right here, that, you know, I'm agnostic to it. Again, I just want the evidence. There's no evidence as of yet right now to lead me to a conclusion to vote for that. So can you kind of help me, guide me along here and try to, push me to that?
Sure, I mean, we can provide the stuff that we were planning to file with the conditional use permit, if that's helpful, which is a little more detailed plans on landscaping. We've got some 3D renderings that'll show what it'll look like with the landscape buffering, and I'm happy to do that. I think the visual impact is important, and it's been important to the community, and so we've made it a point to make sure that we cover that, so I can provide those things to the commission. I can provide studies as it pertains to property values. I can provide studies as it really pertains to any of the concerns that we've spoken about here, and keep you guys informed on that, and I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If there are no further comments from the Plan Commission, I'd like to open the floor up to public comment. And I don't know the best way to keep this somewhat orderly, but if
I would ask if we could, if it's appropriate for this, we can go through the process of public comment if they need to do that, but I also have the landowners here with me. Would they be able to provide comment as well?
yes, yeah.
Do they need to sign up, or can they come now and do the comment? I want to go through the right process.
Probably retrospectively speaking, we should have had a sign-in sheet for those who wanted to speak.
Oh, I thought that's what the one that was.
No, that was just to basically say who was present.
Oh, I gotcha.
So we're probably going to just handle this the old-fashioned way of raising your hand, and Patrick's going to call on people. We would ask people to try to be as concise as possible. There's a lot of folks here, so just respect everybody's time as best we can, and we'll try to get through this. But so it's totally up to you, Patrick, of whether you want to hear from landowners first.
We
and
just
then
have two that
everybody
or
else.
one or two that would speak. It's up to you. We can go through the process of raising hands, or we can just go ahead and bring them up.
What do you guys, what's your opinion on land? Okay, yeah, we'll start with the landowners and
Thank
let
you,
them
guys.
say their piece and then go from there. And as everybody comes up to the podium to speak, for the record, if you could please give your name and address prior to your comments.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hammock. My address is 6126 North, 400 West, Madison, Indiana. Short people. Okay. Wanted to come and talk in support of this. And one of the reasons is I did not realize that our two farms, there's one's a 100 acre and one's a 300 acre parcel, were zoned R4, or I'm sorry, residential agriculture, which means one house per acre could be built on that farm. I was actually surprised. I've always looked at our tax papers and it says agriculture, but that's not the case. You can find out zoning through the city if you call. So I was really surprised because it's been a farm for years. So just saying that, I think that was created, or was changed, the zoning was probably changed back in the early 80s when the buffer zone was created, because it's always been a farm. Of the 400 acres there, we have one house on 400 acres, so, but we could definitely change it to a house on every acre. And I know Mr. Ford on his, which are zoned R4, could put 4 houses for every acre, so we're talking on, on our farm would be 400 homes. I don't want that. We want to continue as a farm. And if anybody does any research going to like Purdue's websites, other universities that are land grant universities, they do a lot of research. So these are going to be native grasses, that type of thing underneath the solar panels. So that's actually better for the wildlife. You know, we go through, we're planting soybeans and corn in the fall. It's all gone. In the spring, we spray it, and it becomes plants again. But it's not natural vegetation. It's something that we plant. Soybeans don't automatically grow. Corn doesn't automatically grow. We have to physically do something. So just to reiterate, the fact that it's zoned for residential, and we're right on the edge of the 2-mile buffer zone. I would personally like to see that change. We are currently taxed as agriculture. Again, that's how we come to realize, when I call and I'm like, we're zoned what? It was a big surprise to me. Some of the things that are positive about solar panels that I think are, they don't increase the number of children going to schools. They don't increase use of the roads. They don't use a sewer system, all of those things. And then I also want to say that Purdue has done studies, I know University of Kentucky, you can actually have sheep in these solar farms. If it's already got a fence around it, that's wonderful. We also know that they can be pollinator friendly, so there's an opportunity there also for farming. And then on the outskirt, depending on how far the setback is, we could still farm it. You could have hay, there's just various things that you can do. There will be an increase of our property taxes, not the neighbor's property taxes. The increase goes, for example, we are currently assessed, I think, at $2,280 per acre on our farmland. If it becomes solar, it automatically goes to $5,000 as regulated by the state. It's over $5,000. But again, that'll change every year. And that property taxes on farms change every year. And one other point I want to make is we farm thousands of acres, like, I don't know, over 5. So I'm getting emotional about this, but our children could not begin to pay the 40% inheritance tax that they'll get on those farms. No way in hell. So they'll be sold off, and they'll become subdivisions. So, and I don't know, somebody can go in and put house trailers. Really, that's the way it's zoned. It is R4, just RA. So I don't want my kids to have to sell farms. But I do ask that you do research using things like universities' research, and not research used by that are funded by coal companies. And there's another thing I wanted to point out. I think people think that they're just showing up here. They're here because we have power plant. We have a power plant here. We have LGD there. We have Gent Power Plant. We have all these transmission lines here. If everybody looks in their backyard or across the road, they have transmission lines everywhere. I drove past one of the farms the other day and I counted 3 huge transmission lines. Not the little ones going to a neighborhood. I'm talking huge. So we need to consider that, because I feel like those transmission lines are probably more dangerous to our health than solar panels. And the other thing to think about is, I hate to say this, but as a farmer, we spray chemicals all the time. I looked at our yard today out the window. I saw 2 tankers with chemicals in it, so we could spray for weeds, and then we'll spray pesticides. All farmers do that. We can't, we all can't be organic. It's not going to work. So just some food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other landowners that would like to comment before I open the floor to the public?
One comment I have.
If you could please approach the podium and give your name and address.
Dean Ford, on the zoning, I don't completely understand it, but if this is R4, and we were proposing 700 acres, and if we could put 4 houses legally on 700 acres, that's 2,800 houses. So there must be something wrong with the zoning. You probably don't want 2,800 houses.
My personal opinion to that would be it may be a good thing for the city, as we've got a severe housing shortage in the city as it
We'll
is.
check on-
If you would like to build 2,800 houses, I think the city would be very appreciative of
I'll
that.
I'll check on getting 2,800 houses.
Please. All right. If we could, maybe we'll just work from the front rows to the back. And anybody who would like to comment,
She had her hand up first.
okay, yeah, if you'd like to go, and then we'll just work from a hand raising, way.
Okay. My name's Sue Klein. I live at 2410 North 533 West, Madison, Indiana. I'm here because my husband can't be. He's a farmer. He's in the field right now. And simply his life responsibility that he tells people is to help feed the world. I want to read just a little statement here that our youngest daughter, when she heard about this meeting, she lives in Lexington, Kentucky now, but she was raised here in Smyrna Township, and she says, "Hello, my name is Olivia Klein Vogel. I was born and raised in Smyrna Township, 1.5 miles from the proposed industrial solar system. My family has farmed, gathered, worshiped, started businesses, raised babies, and been laid to rest in Smyrna Township for generations. I confess I do not live at home anymore, but I can assure you that I am very much invested in the future of this place, as my family will be rooted here for future generations, Lord willing. And that's why I must speak, because I am invested in the future of this place and people. In my following statements, I mean no personal disrespect to Mr. Ford. I do not know the social or financial reasons for this consideration. I have empathy for the struggles of a farmer, and I have dedicated my professional career to working for the current and future success of small farms. I'm aware that from 2012 to 2017, Jefferson County net cash farm income decreased by 67%. We need people and policies that support our farmers, but this is not the answer. I haven't reviewed the contract on the table or the federal tax incentives that may benefit involved parties, but I can't believe it's in Mr. Ford's or this county's long-term interest. I am the first to say that we need more energy options in this country, but we need to slow down and do it right. I am tired of Washington setting objectives and then taking advantage of rural America and rural folks to reach them, which I believe is what is happening with industrial solar proposals on prime farmland. They do not value our rural places or see the intelligence of rural folks by offering shoddy contracts where the landowner and community lose. No surprise. And the private equity firm who owns, I can't pronounce it, IPA Power, the developer, headquartered in big cities, get to cash in. This is an old trick with a new face. I live in Kentucky now and have worked with farmers across the state. We will forever be dealing with the consequences of the coal industry, who stripped what they could, got their money, and left. Who is left to clean up when the company goes bankrupt? It is us, the ones rooted in these places, who must deal with the mess. I'm not against solar development, but they should be installed on more marginal lands. I hope the board will not make a one-off decision, but rather take the long view and identify if there are any areas of the county that would complement the existing development plan. Furthermore, if this place were indeed industrial, it would have been valued and taxed as such for the previous years, and that money would have benefited our kids. But no, it's been taxed as agricultural because that's what the land is, and I hope it will remain that way. I just want to say my husband's 69 years old. He's been farming for 55. And we do not support this project, and we hope that the council will reject this and not further it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lexi Bennett, Recently moved to Lexington, Indiana, but born and raised on Borcherding Road, just quarter mile even down the road from where this is going to be. I would like to establish my credentials for today's discussion. I earned my Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science from IUPUI in 2019, my Master's of Science in Environmental Sustainability in 2021. I am not up here to claim to be an expert on solar energy. Mr. Evans probably knows way more than I do. But my education has equipped me with a deep understanding of climate and energy systems. I believe that this will provide valuable insight for our discussion today. There are significant concerns, as people are going to voice here after me, about EMFs and health concerns and whatnot, just like acid leaking out of batteries and things like that. I would very much urge this board to do their research from accredited universities like Lisa Hammock stated, and understand that these landowners are wishing to go forth with this project because they, as Lisa Hammock stated, are not able to go forward farming as they would wish to. Under electromagnetic fields, with research, it is important to note that these are low levels of non-ionizing radiation. Same thing as your cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, however much of those we have in here today. The more important type of radiation that you want to be concerned about for your health are things like ionizing radiation like CT scans and x-rays. So I would hate for that disinformation to sway you in any way if you have been swayed one way or the other on those health effects. From an environmental perspective, I would like to see a very well-maintained maintenance plan, very well-maintained emergency response plans. That is very, very important as you guys go forward to this plan. You don't want anything to go adversely for these landowners that are surrounding in this county. Regarding efficiency, solar arrays do operate around a 22% efficiency on average. Coal power plants are around 30 to 35, and they have way more environmental impacts from a coal power plant. IKE, as of 2019, was under severe regulation from the EPA for multiple violations. They had land permitting, groundwater issue monitoring that you guys should definitely look into if you haven't been aware of those issues already, where they were leaching harmful chemicals into our groundwater. Solar, wind, and hydropower are some of the safest and cleanest forms of energy. Not saying that this land is best suited for that. I am not swaying one way or the other on that land. I would just like an informed scientific opinion to be put out there. Anyhow, I just want there not to be misinformation and scare tactics. Please consider the science. Please consider what the land is best used for. It might be agricultural. It might be, building extra homes in this county and the city that are definitely needed. Take all that into consideration. Please do your research and don't let misinformation sway you in one way or the other. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to comment?
My name is Sean Hammond. I live on Borcherding Road, right the very north end of it, right next to the last house right beside Deputy Pike. So even with a buffer zone, I'm going to see this every day. I've worked the last 20 some odd years paying off this house, making improvements, working hard for my family. It's one thing I don't want to see every day is this. It will affect my property value. How much is yet to be determined. You can read all the studies you want. You will see it vary between 3% up to 10%. I can't afford that. Like I said, I've worked the last 20 some odd years paying for this house. So if it was to go in and I do lose property value, who do I look for to help me get that back? I'm sure you guys can't afford to pay it. So that is a big concern for me. As far as health concerns, there are health concerns. Yes, they are small EMF centers, each one of them. But when you talk about 150 megawatts concern, that's a lot of EMF concentrated in one area that I live right next to. It's enough to have power lines just right down the road. So that's another concern. To me, environmental concerns. The silicone arrays aren't good for the environment. When we break them, hailstorms, all that stuff gets into the ground. They're not economical when you put them back into the ground. What do you do when you recycle these? When they're back, where do they go? No, that's not where they're recycled. They actually can't recycle them. They're actually ground and thrown in the ground. So that's not good for the environment. Yeah, they can be relatively efficient in the neighborhood of 20–22%. But is it worth giving up the land that we have there of what we're using it for? I hope we don't, because it affects all of us that live there. So it's just something to think about.
Do we have anybody else in the first two rows? Rick?
Rick Roos, 1876 Michigan Road. Been there 3 months, so we're still learning it. I asked, as part of your due diligence, you look at the tail end of it. There are all sorts of, just look on the net as far as the number of failures of solar panel farms in the United States. And I'm wondering who's responsible for the tear down, decommissioning, whatever you want to call it. On the other end, are these funds held in escrow should, unfortunately, whoever the company is go under? That's just my only comment. And also, well, the other question is, how much federal dollars are involved in this, either giving to this solar project or benefits to the landowners? No offense to Tony and Lisa, I just met the big guy, but how much federal dollars are involved in this? Thanks.
My name's Dana Hicks. I live on 300 North 300 West. This project is going to be right across the street from my house. I've got a small farm. I grow apples, pears, fruit, organic vegetables, and corn, and a fish farm too. I don't see how this thing right across the street from my house will affect the can't affect the real estate value. It has to drive it down. I've worked hard on this farm and I've paid it down a lot. And I'm about to lose a lot of money, I've been told. I'm a former real estate broker. And I know, and I've talked to other brokers, it's gonna drive the property value down. And there's a lot of studies out there that tell us that that one that he's talking about in Texas, that debris field is 4,000 acres and it's destroyed. That stuff's all over the ground. Now they're having electromagnetic contamination issues out of that. There's lawsuits going on down there and that. All that's right there on the internet for us to see. And I'm really confused how the term agriculture and solar industrial energy can be intertwined. I mean, I know that a lot of people do a lot of stuff with agricultural land, but we're talking about an industrial site now. That's not agricultural. And 30 years to boot, I won't live to see this thing taken down. By the time I die, and a lot of people in this room, that thing will still be standing there as an eyesore. And from where I can see the whole 1,000 acres. It don't matter if they put a 20-foot berm in front of me, I'll still see it in the back. No doubt. Because I can see all these 1,000 acres out my front door right now of corn this year. And I'm surrounded by Bruce Tandy's property, and I just got a little 6 acres there. And that's, I'm a little guy. And I think the big guy's about to step on me. And that's all I have to say about that.
My name's Mark Frazier. I live at 3738 North 300 West, his neighbor. I have a 2-story home, just appraised for $650,000. How are you going to protect my view from the second floor? You think my house is going to be worth $650,000 if they decide this is going to happen? This is my whole life. My house burned down last year. I've been living in an RV, going through a rough time. My house is 10 days from completion. I've been out of my house longer than I've lived in it. And now I find this out. I've lived a nightmare for a year and a half. And now it looks like it's going to be a nightmare forever, next 30 years. And hailstorms, you all live here in Madison. Man, the hail will rip your crap all to pieces. And it will be a debris field. And I'll be looking at it. It's going to surround me. Everything I have in my life is sitting up there in that property. I'm begging you guys to reconsider this. Thank you.
Nick Scott. I live on 7338 Halls Ridge Road out by Canaan. And my only question is, Mr. Ford, as I understand, is part owner of that proving ground that we have north of Madison. And there's a lot of land there. I don't understand why this thing isn't being put there. There's that huge airfield, and I don't see why that's not a better location than out there on just off Deputy Pike. And that's all.
All right, moving into the kind of middle of the room area. If there's anybody who'd like to comment.
My name's Charlie Ferguson, 718 East 2nd Street, Madison. Who in here is a farmer? Thank you all so much. Through COVID, if it's not for them, it's not for the grocery store people, we don't survive. You can be the best doctor in the world, but you cannot heal starvation. Thanks to you all, we got through it. You didn't call in, you didn't go to your basement, you reported to work every day, and you all did the job. And I would love to see you all get money for your farms when you're done farming. But put up the houses. Patrick and the mayor both ran on more housing in the area. Sell your farms. Get the money you deserve, because you all have worked hard your whole life. But please do not put up these, okay? Give people a good place to live. And I think most everybody in this room would appreciate if that's what happens with your land. Get your money through development. Plus, we need the housing. Thank you.
Anybody else in the middle of the room?
Yes, hi. My name is Dr. Martin Christie, and I live on 4385 West Deputy Pike. So part of this is going to go directly adjacent to our home. And while I'm a very strong supporter of renewable energy, like you said, I think it would be irresponsible to proceed with this without seeing a full set of studies. I professionally study environmental systems and the effects of human interactions on them, and so it's very important to see what happens if we disturb the soil and the drainage isn't managed properly. That can cause downstream disturbances in the river. Amongst a number of other things. So I'm not saying that it's not a good thing. I would also like to echo that there's probably better places to put it. We purchased our home just a few years ago, and we decided to stay here. We were recently contemplating not being here, and I guess it would be a real disappointment to just have an instant loss in our equity. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else middle of the room?
My name's Paula Weatherby, and I live at 2685 West Deputy Pike, and I've lived there 50 years. And we live in the country, and we've tried to make a habitat, and we enjoy the wildlife, and we live on Clifty Creek, which is right next to Clifty Falls State Park. We have one farm in between us, and it's a beautiful area, and we chose to live in the country, and we enjoy it. And we have a power stanchion that goes through to IKE, and we've had to put up with that, and we've cohabited, and we've managed. But to have extra stuff put on us, we are completely surrounded by this. And they just decided to have a subdivision on the corner of Borgedine Road. Well, they came and they said it'd be lovely country homes. They logged the place. Then they didn't know what to do with it, so they decided that they would come to you and decide to put 14 country homes in there. Now, those country homes are going to be surrounded by solar panels. Is that country homes? I don't think so. I think that this was not advertised. Nothing was said about solar panels. Under the Madison thing, you're supposed to give 20 days. We received our first letter last Friday. We received 2 more on Monday. This is not correct. This meeting shouldn't even be taking place. And, you know, everything wants to be slipped in quick and the money made. What's it going to do? You know, the money that you get from this, and I've had my son-in-law research it, it's going to get a couple cruisers and it might get a couple more employees, but it's not going to bring anything to the city. And the people that live in the country and enjoy the country life and have lived there, my stepfather bought this farm after World War II. After he came back, Marion Thompson bought the farm, and it's always been in a farm. And to think that our neighbors who we have been good to, that own these places, want to ruin our lives, and we have to put up with industrial things. When they own, would they want it? One of them lives in DuPont, put it in DuPont. One of them lives in Midway, has a new home in Midway. It's just like the hog farm. Do you want to live next to it? I don't. They own land in the proving ground, and that would not be a deterrent to anyone. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Savannah Stout. I live on Thompson Road, near Chicken Run and Deputy Pike. I'm a wildlife biologist. I keep hearing the announcement of using native species. Is it acceptable to ask questions on that currently?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at what height will the panels be statured?
Yeah, go ahead.
Depends on how they're tilted. Typically, the bottom of the panels is somewhere at 3-ish feet, and 8, probably more than 6, maybe 7 max height.
Okay.
If you wouldn't, would you mind approaching the podium as well, so just so we can catch it on microphone? Yeah, it's.
Sorry.
Or here, if you'd rather,
Yeah,
we've got another microphone over here. Okay.
So if you want to repeat that in the microphone so people can hear.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me? Gotcha. So, depending on the tilt of them, they're rotating. They're on trackers. So, at max tilt, probably 3 feet above the ground, maybe up to 6 to 8, depending on the tilt. It also depends on the soil structure and how tall we have to go with the steel I-beams.
The majority of our native species here in Indiana, their stature is around 3 to 7 feet in height. I would assume that you would have to control these to keep the vegetation below the panels at an acceptable level. What would your management strategy entail?
To control them only to the extent necessary to maintain the efficiency of the panels. So blocking the panels physically from sunlight.
So how would you, if you were to incorporate native species, I assume they would be underneath the panels. Is there a buffer zone? I know there has to be a fence involved. Most of the time with these solar operations, we see creeping red fescue, which is not environmentally friendly. It's not a wildlife species. It actually is a toxic species. Clover has some pollinator benefits, but for the most part, if you are going to establish native species, they are going to be taller statured. They're going to be difficult to maintain. You can't use just regular mowing. Goats has been mentioned. That is somewhat of an acceptable management technique, but then you're going to have the same issue. They're going to climb. They're going to rub on the panels. They can cause some damage. So environmentally speaking, at least with wildlife involved, most of the time these large operations are going to be more of a problem with connective habitat, as well as what are you going to do if you do receive federally listed species present on your property. There will be protocols that are in place. Most of the time, if you talk about bringing in pollinator species, there are like health risk with people that are managing these properties, especially with like bees. People are allergic to bees. So that is definitely something that OSHA even mandates is you have to fill out paperwork. So while it is nice to consider doing both of these things, like creating energy while also providing some sort of habitat, they don't always go hand in hand. There's a lot of maintenance and a lot of conversations that need to be discussed. So I think that needs to be set in stone, a plan for action prior to any sort of moving forward with an approval of zoning.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so all those things are correct, and you're absolutely right. And we have consultants on the ground and have had consultants that know far more about environmental stuff than I do. There are no federally listed species that we've found so far. We do continue those studies. I think they have to be refreshed every year or so. And so we'll continue doing that. You're right that like you're not going to get it perfect both ways. It's not going to be the perfect native species and the perfect solar farm. You're going to have to sacrifice a little bit on one of them. The goal for us is to maintain the land as well as we can so that when they come up, the land can be restored back to its original use. The Jefferson County ordinance, which this isn't contemplated in the Madison zoning ordinance, but it's something we've agreed to anyway, has laid out specific species and things that can be considered for under the panel. So we're going to voluntarily abide by Jefferson County's ordinance when it comes to that.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Adam Stout. I live at 916 North Thompson Road. And I'm here to speak out against this proposal. Others are going to make arguments about efficiency or economics, versus industrial solar versus coal, nuclear, etc. They'll make arguments about which type of power generation is least impactful, as my wife just did. I find all these things interesting, but I'm not here to talk about technical issues, watts per acre, or what type of panels. I'm not here to talk about economic growth or keeping with the times. And I'm not here to oppose residential or commercial solar. In fact, I very much support those technologies. I'm here to talk about an existential crisis, one that transcends politics and gets to the core question of does this improve the lives of the local population? And I would emphatically say no. You may say we should hear both sides. The reality is there's no democratic compromise on this issue. One side will lose, and one side will win. 1,000 acres of beautiful Indiana land will either be maintained or it'll be permanently altered with metal and ugly techno plates. And maybe we're okay with the current project, but what about the next one and the next one? This sets a precedent for the county that the county is for sale to each and every corporate interest. I don't know about you, but I don't really like that. And that would be my argument to those in here that maybe lean to the left. Do we really want large corporations who likely aren't even based in our state, almost certainly aren't? Do they have any interest in the long-term health of our community? To those that are more conservative, I'd say trust that instinct that makes you conservative, that makes you want to protect the people, the land, the culture. Maybe there's more important things than tax revenues, a few jobs, or increased GDP, whatever that means. This area's heritage is based on the river and agriculture. I would like us all to take a big pause before allowing things to take hold here that could uproot that. You ever notice how you get off the interstate and every small town looks the same? Don't let that happen here. Madison is unique and it will take virtue and fortitude to maintain that in the face of cultural homogenization that we can see happening before our eyes nationally and globally. Humans, specifically rural ones in today's age, are very tied to the land around them. Some of the greatest human inspiration comes from natural beauty. As an example, not too long ago, a photo of some mountains in China went viral on social media because they absolutely covered the slopes with these panels and destroyed the natural beauty. It took something intangible but very valuable away from the residents. That is, they took away the connection people had with their environment. All industrial scale solar should be looked at in this way. It will take something away that can't be quantified on a graph or in terms of dollars and cents. But I promise you, having lived near solar farms previously, it brings a sense of industrialization and urbanization to the countryside that is very jarring. In the end, my only request of the committee is defend your community, this way of life, and traditions that are being intruded upon by shadowy corporate interests far away. Hate to throw around carpetbagger, but
my name's Paul Goley. This is my wife, Cindy Goley. Our business is at 2241 Clifty Drive. We also operate the orchard there, and in addition to row crops on the farm. And I just want to state that we feel like we're kind of being rushed into this because we didn't receive that letter till Tuesday from the city, and we had very little time to prepare for it. And it's also misstated in the Courier that it's only supposed to be for a 10-acre zoning change, which is incorrect. I've got the clipping if you want to see it. But anyway, it turns out to be 1,046, which is quite a difference in the amount that they stated in the paper. I just want to say too that about a month ago, we had some survey flags, survey flagging tape put on our property, which I don't know who did it, but whoever it was didn't ask for permission to be on our property to do that. So I was kind of concerned that they didn't have any respect for us or our property before they did that going on our property. We own to the southwest of part of this parcel that's being proposed in this solar farm. So anything from prevailing wind west from that is going to be coming onto our property. As far as if it changes the wind or the temperature, I've got a question too, if I could ask about how much that actual panels would change the temperature in the area as far as in number of degrees, as far as our orchard's concerned, because that's we're kind of concerned about the temperature of our fruit, because if it comes out too early, it's more susceptible to freeze. So could you answer that question?
Yeah, how much does it generate?
The actual temperature that's coming off of your panels, how much does it raise that, and how many feet out away from the property line would that go?
Yeah, this question has come up a few times. It's not something that I've seen with other projects that it's come up, but the solar panels, the way they're designed, obviously, is to absorb the light, right?
Yes.
They absorb the light, and then the heat, in turn, bounces around the electrons, creates energy. If we were in the business of letting that heat go, that would not be beneficial for us in any way. So I am not aware of any projects that have ever increased temperature. If you went and stood up next to it, anything that sits in the sun all day and you put your hand right above it, it's probably hot to the touch, as anything is that sits in the sun. But there's going to be no impacts outside of that from any heat or anything like that.
I've been studying this for the last day and a half, and what I did read was that it only produces about 20 to 22% of energy. Where does the rest of the 80% of the energy go? And it did talk about the heat that is generated by each panel that would create a higher temperature around them.
Yeah,
I did read that.
I gotcha. Yeah. So 20 to 22%. It's sort of. It mainly depends on the part of the country that you're in. I think we project somewhere around 24, so that's probably about right. As far as the heat, like escaping. Again, if you're right up next to it, it's going to be hot to the touch, or you're going to feel it, but that does not expand outside of just the direct vicinity of the panels. There's no increased heat that's going to be put out any more than any object that would just be sitting out there.
She's not asking about one, she's asking about 1,000.
We're talking about the actual I'm talking about the actual
Combined.
reflection of those panels going back up into the air and then going out like this. You know what I'm saying?
Understood. Yeah, they don't reflect. The goal is to absorb the light, obviously. There's also additional guidelines from the FAA. We can't just have glare or reflections going up into the sky with
But do
planes.
you have any documentation though that that doesn't occur?
We can get you something. If I can get your information after, I'm happy to do that, and we'll provide it to the commission.
The 80% that I was concerned about primarily is because if that's escaping and it's not being harnessed, and you have pregnant women, you have young children, and is this electromagnetic energy that we're talking about? There's a lot of studies that that's not okay. It's not healthy.
Understood. Yeah, they're at low voltages. Understood that it's a large swath of energy. They're at low voltages. There's more concerns in those studies with high voltage transmission lines. Understood that like you probably didn't love the high voltage lines either. I get that. But there's probably more danger associated with like high voltage lines. As far as escaping, like the 80%, it's just not actually capturing the sunlight and able to turn that into electricity. It's not like it's like there's 100% that goes in and then we like take 80% back out. It just doesn't ever get into the modules.
Well, we have a son that lives on Deputy Pike. He's going to be in the center like an Oreo cookie in his family.
Okay.
And so he's got panels on both sides of his house.
Okay.
So whatever occurs, whether it be the temperature rising, the poor view, and the lower amount that they might get their home if they ever move, our problem is we've been there for almost 100 years.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We have an orchard. And we feel like with the trees, I don't really want to step on your, I'm going to get into his part.
Well, our orchard's not, directly across the property line at this time, but, with agricultural plants and trees, sometimes you need to rotate your crops, so I mean, it's a potential for me to plant some, or our family to plant some trees across the property line directly from that site, so I'm really concerned about how that would affect the future use of that land for my orchard.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You're going to plant
It's
trees?
possibly we have an apple orchard,
Yes, sir.
so it's in soybeans right now.
Okay.
But in order to rotate my crops, I might potentially plant, fruit trees on that property that's in soybeans right now, but that would be directly across the property line from where that solar panel farm is.
Okay.
So, I'm really concerned about how that's gonna affect the temperature in that surrounding area, because I know that's gonna have to give off some kind of heat, lose some kind of heat back into the.
Concrete gives off heat.
Right.
Yes,
So
it absolutely does. Yes.
If we could please refrain from any comments and just.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. And the other concern that we really had is that bees are very fragile, and we don't have a lot of bees left.
No,
And if it interferes with their little tracking system going back and forth.
and also bats, other wildlife that are gonna be crossing that much, area, it seems like it would be very harmful to that.
Yeah, to the bats.
So, yes.
We have bat acoustic monitoring out there right now that we have to get a certain number of days of monitoring. Depending on what that tells us, it eliminates our ability to. There's not a lot of trees out there that can actually even be cut down. A lot of them are what amounts to like jurisdictional wetlands, in which case we can't touch them. The few little areas that there are trees that we might be able to clear, we would only do that if the cost benefit, obviously analysis is worth it to do it, to gain that extra wattage of panels. But on the bat acoustic studies, that determines when we can and can't, during like nesting seasons, when we can and can't actually cut any of those trees down to affect their habitat.
Well, with all my time studying from universities, and I don't mean to step on Lisa's toes here, but you'll find them to be very vague because they get a lot of money for their programs to promote these programs that, all these farms. So you're not gonna get a lot of information from the universities. That's what I found. The other thing was, nobody really talked about the airport. Now, you mentioned that there's not a lot of reflection. What I've read about it is there's a lot of reflection. Because where we're situated, where all these panels are, that's the turnaround for every one of those jets and airplanes, and they gotta fly over that and still see where to land.
There's regulation from the FAA that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and you already got the okay.
We have not gotten the okay.
Okay.
What we did do we are outside of what the FAA deems as the approach zone, which technically doesn't force these studies to be done, but we typically do them. It's called a glint and glare study, and that's something that we're happy to do if that's a concern, and provide it to whoever, commission or anything like that, because while it's outside of the zone, it is within, I think, 5-ish miles of the airport, where it is. As far as the reflection, I understand that you've been doing your research, and I certainly appreciate doing the research ahead of time. I've seen no evidence of that, and again, the goal of them is to absorb the light, not reflect, and it works negatively on our end if that happens.
Do you have any studies to talk about airflow? Because what I was reading was that airflow is kind of hampered because it's like a shield, a wall. And so airflow, having a rising temperature, all you guys over there in between and sandwiched and close to it are not going to get the breeze. It's going to be hotter than what it is this summer.
It was warm today. As far as the airflow goes, I mean, people build structures and buildings, and there's trees everywhere. And if you're right behind a tree, yes, there is no breeze as structures block the breeze. But I've frankly haven't seen any.
How would that affect rainfall? Would that have an effect on the precipitation coming down as far as evaporating it before it got down to like neighboring property?
No, sir.
I hate to interrupt, but we've got a lot of other people.
I just want to ask about humidity, because we fight as farmers. We have to fight all the time and use more fungicide and everything. And I understand by reading this.
Is it fungicide? Sorry.
Fungicides and
Okay.
things, because this creates more humidity underneath, because the sun isn't underneath of them. And so it creates more disease. I did read about that also. And God says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So please give us the time to learn more about this.
I just want to add one more thing. I mean, we're downstream from some of that property. If you do have a hailstorm or some type of a damage and you get leakage, it's going to come down through part of our farm and into the tributaries of Clifty Creek. And also that battery farm that you're going to have on Dawson Smith is also close to the tributary of Clifty Creek also, which runs into Clifty Falls State Park. So I'm just concerned about environmental problems with it.
And they can't use water. They have to use foam to put this out. And if you look at the studies,
All right,
there's
wait, I hate to cut you off, but we've got too
Thank
many
you
other
for your
people.
time.
Thank you very much.
Would you mind?
Okay, you let all of you.
Could you? I just want to respond quickly. Could you remind me the last point before the foam? What you said before the foam, so I can address the
Humidity.
No, it was more. I mean, I can address that too.
Rainfall.
Affect the rainfall.
Okay. Well, we'll have to move on. All right. There's a lady in a black dress who's been trying to come up for a bit.
Hello, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Hello, my name is Erica McIntyre. My husband, Jared Wilson, and I live between W. Pike and Chicken Run Road at 3023 North, 533 West, not very far from where the parcels in question today are located. We did not get any notice of today's meeting as our property, a small, cherished homestead, does not share a line with the parcels in question. But you do not have to share a property line to share the consequences of a rezoning decision like this one. We are deeply concerned about the intended use of the parcels if and when they were to be rezoned. We have come here today to express these concerns and to ask that the board either deny the request or delay a decision on it until more of the community members whom this would impact can gather more information and have time to address any concerns. I have worked my entire career as a journalist, editor, and writer. So I know that the language we use to describe things matters immensely. Calling something a solar farm is a misnomer and a bastardization of the very concept of a farm. Solar farms are not at all farms, but instead should be called by their proper names, solar industrial sites. The land is currently designated residential Residential ag. Petitioner would like it zoned ag. Okay. If the intended use of the land once rezoned really is for solar industrial sites, forgive me, it should actually have to meet the standards and process for being zoned industrial, because that is what it would be. I cannot imagine our beautiful countryside with this many acres of new industry upon it. I have grave concerns about what this might do to the land, the wildlife, the water, the air, not to even mention the property values of the neighboring residents. Until these concerns can be addressed and questions answered, a hasty decision on rezoning does not seem like the right course of action today for this body. We have many questions, including Jefferson County is currently in a well-documented housing crisis. How might this decision help or hurt that situation? Would extensive environmental impact studies be conducted before any solar industrial site broke ground? What might the penalties be for any damage or violation of local law or neighbor's property rights by the petitioner? What would it truly do to our property values? How might a solar industrial site negatively impact tourism to our county, an industry that has actually helped this region immensely? We all know the maxim that my right to extend my fist ends at the tip of another person's nose. Landowners have rights, but so do their neighbors. A decision today to rezone the parcels in question instead of denying or delaying decision on the request would be tantamount to a sock in the nose to the residents of North Madison. We ask you not to do that. I want to emphasize that we did not have to fly here today to attend this meeting. We are residents of this community who stand to lose the most from a poor decision by this body today. We have to live and work here. We are your constituency, and you owe it to us to hear us and place our concerns above those of out-of-state interests. And I thank you for listening.
Do you have anybody else who'd like to make public comment?
My name is Tracy Licklider. I live at 5512 West Deputy Pike. So, like the lady said, I'm not adjacent to the property, but I am a neighbor. My concern is the safety of this facility. In Jefferson County and in Madison, we have 0 paid fire departments, as everyone knows. It's ran by volunteers that take their time out to do training. What are you going to do when something happens at this place? Yeah, what's going to happen when there's a fault and there's 2 people on the site in the building?
Are you saying it's in regards to like emergency management personnel? We'll have a detailed emergency management plan that we have laid out with the firefighters. We've done the same thing with the battery storage facility. We've had extra meetings with them, and we'll continue to hold annual trainings, and we will agree to that via contract with the city, just like we have with the county on the battery site.
You can't put water on these solar panels and the batteries. What firehouse in this county has a foam suppressant system capable of managing 1,000-some acres?
Jefferson County has procured that in the conversations that we have, and they've been using it in other battery fires on the solar farm. I haven't been privy to any of them catching on fire.
Which department? Which county department? Which city department?
I've had extensive meetings with Matt True, the emergency management personnel, as well as some of the firefighters in the county.
There's no fire hydrants in this area.
We don't use water.
I know, but there's also, like I said, we're all volunteer here. There is not enough equipment, not enough manpower in this county properly trained to handle something like this, minus the exposure to the chemicals. We have no hazmat here in the county anymore. Township had it for years, but they don't have it anymore. This would be considered a hazardous material incident, would it not?
I'm not sure how those are classified.
Well, what are the solar panels made of?
There's an array of materials that include silicone, but I'm not aware of the classification of hazardous materials.
Correct. Well, I think I'm not an expert. You know, we all live in the county. You know, there's a lot of different opinion here, but my main concern is the safety. You wanna put in buffer zones. Well, that's fine and dandy. You know, you've got two people on a site in a shed. How are they gonna keep track of all this? There's not even dependable internet service in that area. We live 5 miles outside the city limit and you still have to have a landline. We have city water. They just put, you know, high-speed internet cables through and tore the crap out of my yard. What about the steel beams that are gonna be driven into the ground? How far will they be driven in the ground?
Depends on the soil structure. It's anywhere from
How large are these beams?
I'm not very good with dimensions, probably this wide.
Are they stainless
They're stainless steel, yes.
or galvanized?
I'd like to get you an educated answer on that. I actually don't, I'm not aware of what we're gonna procure on this specific
So what you're
project.
putting into the earth is good for the earth?
Again, it's, we'd have to. it would
How
depend.
large of a space, once you remove these panels or these I-beams from the earth, how much is that going to disturb the soil?
How much would removing the I-beams disturb the soil?
Yes, if you've driven it below ground, won't you have to dig around that to remove the I-beam in 30 years?
Not to my knowledge, they're just pulled and lifted out of the ground.
Interesting. So all that contamination to the soil,
I'm not aware of what contamination you're speaking of.
if you put pollutants in something that's not natural to the earth, microorganisms, beneficial fungi, you're putting metal in the earth, how can you sit there and say that's beneficial?
I mean, every structure that's built is gonna have things put into the earth. I'm not sure that this is unique to this specific project.
So when these panels fail, like we've discussed, and a hailstorm comes through with all this debris, who's gonna come clean it up?
That would be us, and we would outsource likely somewhere locally.
Somewhere
contract.
locally, we have a hazmat cleanup facility here in the county?
The closest,
Here in Madison? So we have to bring in an outside company.
we
To
would pay
clean this up.
a local company to do it, yes.
All right,
Because we don't have.
in the interest of getting everybody up, if you have any final remarks.
No, just that this, it's like everyone said, we need to get all of our eggs in the same basket. Yes, farming is not a money-making issue. It's never been. As far as the property, it's 1.73 acres is the smallest amount that can be deemed for a homestead here in the county, not 1 acre. You know, I live on a parcel of ground that's been in my family for over 100 years. My father's probably spinning in his grave. Long story short, we really need to think about this before, you know, we do something like this. This is going to affect hundreds, if not thousands of people. It's not gonna stay in one area, like Marble Hill. That's a prime example.
Anybody else who'd like to make public comment?
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Opsu, 317 East Street, Madison. I'm also serve on the Board of Aviation Commissioners for the airport, and I can say that, just for reference, it's 100% inside the approaches for the airport. Okay, so merely pointing out that that is going to have to be a consideration for our operation. You're both on the departure. Where this is going is directly on our departure and directly on the approach ends into the airport. So whatever consideration for glare, and I read a couple of different studies on this, but that's something that I would strongly urge that you consider is the impact that this will have onto the airport as far as the glare and the overall safety for the community. So just bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rodney Black, live at 2188 North Birchstein Road, but however, I'm here to give my mother support. We all live on the same 80-acre farm that's been in the family for a long time, well over 100 years. But I've seen what things have done to our property as far as when the state highway widened the state highway just south of my mom's house. They stacked all the debris up there, leveled it off and built stuff on it, so we get the water runoff going into the drainage ditch that back up. So, and so those are some of the problems that my father and my mother had to deal with all their lives. And there has to be a contingency plan. I'm not for it, because we all live on the farm, and I don't want that eyesore next to me. However, I'm not trying to be nasty or mean, but put it out by your house, by your residence, instead of my residence.
Excuse me, would you mind touching the button on the pad of the microphone there? Thank you.
My name's Brittany Gray. I live at 7101 State Road 56. It's not near it, but I just came to tell you I've worked in solar for the last 8 years of my life, and it is not horrible like everyone thinks. I've worked in one in Kerrville, Texas, that is right across the street from a school. It's 100 megawatts. It brings no in there. You can touch a solar panel when it's on. It's no hotter than touching the top of a metal car when the sun's been beating on it all day. I worked at a solar field in Colorado that was a prairie dog sanctuary. They also bring in goats and sheep to mow it to keep from any harm happening to wildlife. It doesn't, when a solar panel breaks, this magical chemically ooze does not leak out of it. It is just a break in a piece of glass, and then they send out a commissioning company like I have worked for multiple times to take the panel off and to put the new panel on. And another company that is trained in handling, and that they don't just take them to a landfill and dump them away. They go to a storage place that is okay for them. It's not a horrible thing. It brings nothing but good things. In all of the towns I worked in, all of their energy bills have went down. I worked in Richfield, Utah. It is a town half the size of Madison, and all it did was bring good things to their town. Like, it's not a horrible thing. Solar is a renewable energy. It's not going to go away. The sun will always be here. Coal can only be brought out for so long. It's just, I urge people to not just think, oh, it's solar, it's horrible, it's going to kill the ground. It's really not. Even after you take the solar panels out, the galvanized steel beams that only go in about 2.5 to 3 feet don't
If you could, hold on. If you're on the phone in the back, could you please leave the room? Could you please turn that phone off? Sorry about that.
You're okay.
Please go
The
ahead.
panels, when they're drove in by a pile driver, don't disturb it any more than less than I would say building a house. When you take them out, the hole is filled back in. It's not just left to be a hole in the ground. You can always plant hay, other grasses. Things can be planted there. It's not just like it's a wasted piece of land once the solar panels are gone. I just urge Madison to try to think forward and the things that could happen, and just try to be on the side of renewable energy.
I'm Jed Skillman. I live at 1505 Michigan Road. And I think it might have been best at the beginning of this discussion if we'd mentioned how big is 1,000 acres. And if you look it up, 640 acres, square acres, is a square mile. So we're talking significantly over a square mile, almost a mile and a half. It's a mile and a half if you drive from Cragmont to the bottom of the Cliffside Inn Hotel up here. That's a mile and a half. And it's a little less than a little over half a mile from Vaughn Drive to the bottom of the hill. So think of everything in the historic area of downtown as one big solar panel. That gives you, with enough room left over to run some solar panels up the side of the hill. That tells you how much real estate this is going to use. The previous speaker mentioned something about forward-thinking technology. And my real point in coming up here was to mention that solar panels are a interim technology. It will fill a gap between the coal-fired plant over here and what comes next. And what comes next is the real answer. And when you put an interim technology in, I'll mention anybody who's been to Cincinnati. If you notice, just north of the downtown Cincinnati is Columbia Parkway, and it's a huge, wide street. Well, in the 1840s, they dug it up and made a canal out of it, because that's the technology. So they dug this huge canal, and it cobbled together a network of canals that went all the way up to Lake Erie to get goods from down Cincinnati up to the lake. And that lasted, and that was very profitable for just a few years until the locomotive came along. And the canal business went bankrupt. And then the canal sat there as an open sewer for decade after decade until the people of Cincinnati got tired of it and with their money filled it in and turned it into a road. Solar panels are a bridge technology. There's nothing wrong with them. My wife and I are contemplating putting 2 solar panels on our back porch to power a sump pump in case the power goes out. That's 2 panels there. And we know it's a bridge technology because something else will come along. And something else, I know it's a dirty word, but they're talking Gen 4 nuclear reactors, which are smaller than this room. And there's already, Bill Gates is investing in Generation 5 nuclear reactors. They're already testing Gen 4. Gen 5 is on drawing board someplace, and that's going to go even farther. So before you chew up all this land and put all these solar panels in, and then when they are no longer needed, what do you do with them? They go into a landfill someplace. So before you commit to solar panels, just remember, if you think ahead that 30 years through the life of the solar panel, are we still going to be using solar panels? Or are we going to be using a new forward technology? Thank you.
My name is Michael Greco on 1106 East Street. I have no property adjoining this farm. I have friends that do. You hear where some people say that it can be hazardous, some say that it can't. I urge everyone just to Google the 4,000 acre farm in Texas that was destroyed by 2-inch hail. We all know what kind of hail we get here. On top of that, solar panels contain a variety of materials: lead, cadmium, arsenic, silicone. Those can be dangerous. Lady in yellow just said that she's worked for 8 years in this field and there's nothing hazardous about it. But according to this, anytime a panel is broken, the EPA has to do a test, a TCLP test. If that test fails, that has to be managed as hazardous waste. That means it has to be disposed of, it has to be trucked out. It's the whole 9 yards. So I urge everyone to do some research, take a look at that farm in Texas, and then it is a hazardous waste, or can be, depending upon the severity of the damage. And I really wouldn't want to see this in Jefferson County, and ask the board to really reconsider not allowing this. Thank you.
Kevin Ford, 4588 West Deputy Pike. We're an adjoining landowner. Kevin Hort, 4588 West Deputy Pike. We're an adjoining landowner. I personally know the individuals that's proposing this. They're both very good people. They're great people. I think we just ought to give us 30 days to figure out the scale of it, the magnitude where we're gonna go and rediscuss it. Thank you.
Do we have any further public comments or anybody who's not inside the room?
I'm Robert Black. I live at 1988 North Borchardine Road. Our family trust is where my mother is in the family farm. We live there, well, I've been there 57 years, a little over 57 years. And no matter how I look at it, whether I'm gonna go Chicken Run, because like he explained how big of an area it is, if you go from Chicken Run over to Deputy Pike and then go over from Deputy Pike to 400 North, that's a big area. That's a very big area. And no matter which way I go, I'm gonna be looking at this. I don't care what kind of barriers they put up. We're still gonna see it and we're gonna know it's there. I understand we're in it for, money put in the county coffers and all that. And I know once that the city approves it, going through all the steps, in the end, after it's approved and they go through all the building plans and everything with that, then it gets turned over to the county. Then the county's responsible for it in that buffer zone. And I know this from experience. It's the way it works out. So, and I've known Mr. Ford for, God, since I was a teenager. You're getting kind of old, Dean. So, but as far as from the Black family, we are against that. And so we would not like it to be there because we travel Deputy Pike, we travel Chicken Run Road. We do all that and we do not want to see that. Thank you.
Elaborate for everybody, for the fire departments, as to what our capabilities are.
In all actuality, we have capabilities for the fire department. The thing what I've learned about public meetings is that the fire company, as far as the fire departments go, the only thing we can do is review the plans, and if they meet the standard, all we can say is, okay, you've met the standard. And that we can't say yay or nay, because that would be a wrong approach. We try to stay professional. And so we have a lot of capabilities in this county, in the city of Madison. We're very blessed with all of them. But as far as the fire department, we can't, if they meet the plan and they meet all the NFPA requirements that we're gonna look at, because I was kind of dumbfounded because my mother didn't receive no notice until Tuesday evening. I get the text message on Wednesday, and of course you couldn't be put on the agenda because you have to have a 24-hour notice. The city of Madison was closed on, all county government and city governments were closed on Wednesday, so I couldn't get put on the agenda. And so I did not have time to prepare a big research other than a little bit of what the property value is, about 1.5% decrease in your property value, which isn't significant, but it is to me. I mean, I'm just a poor old rotary lit factory worker. So, we just can't, as a fire department professionally, we have a lot of integrity. We cannot say one way or the other or give a big comment other than review the plans, and if it meets the plans and anything that's needed extra, then that's as far as we can take it. And so that's why I want to refrain from, until I actually see everything and know what the hazards are. I have to do we have to do an analysis of it. And it's just not me. I have to have a whole chief staff go through the whole thing.
As part of this process as well, I just want to remind everybody what this plan commission is looking at tonight is a recommendation only. So it would be a recommendation that will be referred to the Madison City Council. So there will be, regardless of what is decided tonight, there will be a chance for the city and the county to have further research into the needs of fire suppression, et cetera.
The only responsible party for that district is Madison Township and Rocky Ridge Fire Department. It falls within their jurisdiction. So unless we call them mutual aid and they have tankers, it's not going to help us a whole lot other than manpower. And we call back and forth. You know that. We do it consistently. If the city needs help, we roll into the city. If we need help, the city rolls out and helps us. We've been doing that for the last 25 years.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Good evening. I just wanted to visit the zoning
Oh, could we
ordinance.
please have your name and address
I'm
for the record?
sorry. I'm Sherry Chapo, and I live in the 10,000 block of West Deputy Pike.
Thank you.
I don't abut up to any of these projects, but I drive by it, and my neighbors and my friends all live around here too. I wanted to address the zoning ordinance that we're looking at here for a rezoning to the agricultural. And in this section 4.41 in your zoning ordinance, agricultural district, it says the purpose of the ag district is to preserve and protect prime agricultural land by controlling the indiscriminate infiltration of urban development into agricultural areas. Specific provisions for this district are set forth below. So we have to go in here and they explain what agricultural is, what farm is. This is a misnomer that solar is more industrial. It's generating energy, and that's where it's at. The thing that concerned me the most is in looking at the zoning ordinance, the word solar does not appear in your ordinance at all. So we are here to ask you to rezone into an agricultural zoning without the BZA having a directive, if that's where it goes next, to put it under a classification that does not exist. So you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. Now the county, in their unified development ordinance, does address solar. But this isn't in the county, this is in the city buffer over here. And I guess we can be kind of lucky that because we're in the city here, that we're able to address this with you right now beforehand, because already in the county, these solar farms are already being negotiated around us without most people even knowing about it, and they don't need to come in front of a board like you and ask for permission. So preserve this land right here as farm, and look at your zoning ordinance that you don't even have the authority to be making this. You can't even put solar in there without going to your county council, probably with the city. I know the county goes to the commissioners. I don't know what your process is, but it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I can kind of address that just a little bit. In the, when you look at the schedule of uses under agriculture, there's a category for major utility stations and plants. And we believe that this falls under that. And so they would have to ask for a conditional use permit through the BZA.
So it's generating utility, so it's not for a public utility is what that one is? Because I saw some other stuff and it didn't seem to fall into any such, I guess that would be an argument for the BZA.
Yeah. But,
Okay.
but I think that's where it would fall. If it were to fall anywhere, that's where it would fall.
And so in the utilities, I thought that it explained and it was electric, gas. I didn't see solar defined in there.
Yeah, so.
So that would be an overstep of, I don't know if that would be within the board to do that, or the council would have to add solar to that.
Not necessarily. They could find that in here, I believe, so.
Okay, well, thank you, but I agree to disagree. Thank you.
I will be brief. My name is Karen Skillman. I live at 1505 Michigan Road.
Can you hold on just one second? We lost a quorum.
Oh, okay, yeah, we'll have to wait until, our member returns, sorry.
If you want to take a break, you could, just like a 5-minute break or something.
Sure. Okay. I will move that we take a 5-minute recess.
Is there a second?
I'm all for that. I second that.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
You can have a 5-minute recess as well.
Recess too. Chip was right over here.
We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
No shit. we'll have to call this and this up.
Trying to lip read, but I couldn't. Yeah, I was just asking a question you asked. Didn't have any plans tonight, did you, Ray? Good.
I made sure I didn't have plans tonight. Eat and sleep.
Eat and sleep? Okay, nothing wrong with that.
Back up at 6 a.m. I wake up at 6:25 to get here. Around 7:40ish, just gives me a little window.
How long a drive do you have?
It's 50, so I live with my girlfriend in Salisbury, so it's about 50.
Yeah, it's not a bad road.
Not bad. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So,
Yeah.
it's really, well, right now it kind of sucks because it's so hot.
Right.
My air conditioner in my car.
Oh, did it?
I think my mechanic did it on purpose, honestly. I went there, so I don't know if you're a car guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my starter went out, and
Right.
me and her dad worked on it, but we didn't. I don't think we connected. This is an old CRV. It's an 02 CRV. I don't know if we connected it all the way. Had it towed to a mechanic. He literally. I paid him like $130, which is his diagnostic fee.
Right.
Just to like move it. I don't know what he did exactly, but I've had that car since 2019, so 5 years now.
Right.
Never had insurance. Never. Get it back next day. Guess what goes on?
You're a kid.
Is it a
Day?
coincidence? Literally the next day I was driving, I turned it on.
What kind of car was it?
It's an 02 CRV. I'm
Yeah.
of the if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And I mean, I've been meaning to get a new car eventually, just because the commute is in East Coast. I've been over here for some time. So as far as
And you like living in Scottsburg, right?
so
Or Salisbury, I'm sorry.
And
Yeah.
I mean, there was my girlfriend. She's a teacher. She has a job there.
Oh,
so
well, yeah.
relocating is it's a big. It's a
Well,
big
you gotta
thing.
work your priorities out.
Yeah, and then housing. It's a lot of different factors. Sure. So I'm just like, let me just ride this thing until the wheels fall because I want to put $5,000 into
Well,
a
yeah,
car that I do not literally like. My car just stopped working. Like I'm trying and it just stopped.
Right.
Like transmission, engines. You need about let's get rid. It's done. But it's still working. I mean, the AC's gone and it shakes a little bit when you accelerate, but
It's okay.
is that the end of the
Well, I used to drive.
BMW doing?
I used to drive the Jet, which is about 35, 36 miles, not on a good road, and always had cars that were very mechanically sound, good tires, but not new. Because first off, I was at a power plant, you get pollution, you get this kind of things every now and then. So I never drove new cars, but as long as they're mechanically sound, I like that.
Yeah, that's how my dad was. He drove the same car when he was back in the Congo. He used to drive the same old Jeep.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Thing until
Yep.
he
my work car. It was just old, well.
I've been thinking about getting like a Prius or something, just
Well,
something
yeah,
that I can just
exactly.
wear
The
down.
dependable, every camera I had, and I had some old for work, but one thing I could depend on, the air conditioning would work, our windows would work, and the radio would work. Pretty much all I need.
Yep,
You know,
that's
keep
all
good
I need.
tires on it.
The radio's good and
Yeah. Ring the bell, like Sister Francine used to do. Come on in.
Not to say we can't still
Table it.
Yeah. Okay, if we could call this meeting back to order. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Karen Skillman, 1505 Michigan Road. The only thing I want to say is do not wait, do not put this off. Vote to not recommend this zoning change. Tell your city council, the members who are here, I know there are a few city councilmen here, do not recommend the zoning change. You can vote on it right now. You don't have to wait. You don't need any more information. Everybody behind me said wonderful things, pro and con. You've got a lot of information that we heard tonight. So please just vote no to change the zoning and do not recommend it. And then all of us citizens need to make sure our city councilmen do not approve it. Thank you.
I'm Teresa Licklaughter. I live at 3366 North, 600 West in Madison. I don't join the property with my house, but some of my property does. I did some research, and I saw on WHAS News that it said Clark County has voted no to any solar farms there. One of the reasons cited was that they said the research showed them that residents should not be within 1.2 miles of a solar farm. I did some Google searches of my own. There was varying distances, most of them shorter than that, but they summed it up saying that this is new technology. We really don't know how safe it would be to live from a solar farm, especially as large as this one is. So I urge you to take in consideration the health and safety of our community.
I move that we table this discussion to the August meeting, and I want to give a little clarification for why that is, at least on my behalf for making that motion.
Before we get into that, do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, we now have discussion.
Okay, the key factors that I'm trying to consider with tabling this discussion for this period of time is the simple fact that there is a large lack of information that we have as far as the planning and zoning goes. We have a smattering of properties surrounding an agricultural area. There's no precedence for that. However, we have land that has been operated and owned agriculturally. We owe it to all the parties involved to give you an intelligent and informed decision. I understand that there are values here of good and bad, and we all have differences in how we weigh that. We need to come to a conclusion that we can bring you that evidence in an order of magnitude. Like, I understand that the information supporting not having solar farms abounds. I know that there's some information supporting that. We owe it to you to give you the best information that we can. I cannot vote on this correctly, and I'm not doing you a service if I'm just saying yes or no, being swayed on the lack of information I have. So for what it's worth, that's why I came to that decision. That's why I'm putting in that motion.
Is there any other comments from the board on tabling? Okay, if not, we will do a vote.
You want to do roll call?
Let's do a roll call on this.
Okay. Joel Storm,
Yes.
Jerry Ralston,
Yes.
Van Crafton,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
No.
Patrick Tevenall.
Yes. How does that work with our quorum?
4,
The motion fail?
motion failed.
Okay, the motion to table this has failed. To remind everybody here, this is a 9-member body. We have a quorum of 5 here today, so any decision made by this body requires 5 votes. So the motion to table failed. So we will return to our discussion of the applications on the table. We've had a lot of public comment so far, but do we have anybody else who would like to speak? We can have your name and address again, please.
Dana Hicks. I live on 300 Northwest. One of your main functions is to protect the tourism of this environment. We got a very nice environment, and that's all I got to say about that. And everybody in here that has property affected by this, they got a letter in the mail.
If you could please direct your comments.
They got a letter in the mail. If you wanted to go try to sell your house tomorrow, by law, you're going to have to fill out a seller's disclosure saying that they're trying to put a solar farm right across the street from your house.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who'd like to make comment?
Hi, my name's Lisa Ferguson. I live at 718 East 2nd Street. Had no desire to speak to anything other than to listen to what the farmers had to say. I was prepared before the meeting to ask Patrick, because I know he has farmland, is this something you would want? And I was thankful that you seem like it's something you would not approve of. What I came up here to say simply is, it doesn't seem like people were notified in the amount of time that they should have been. Maybe because we had a holiday, maybe because we want to blame it on the good old postal service that I'm supporting, but somehow the word didn't get out. I encourage you, if we have to do another meeting like this again, where you know there's going to be contentious things to do, to have it at a bigger venue. City Hall, we know sometimes from previous things, is too small. What I mostly want to say is thank you, Carl, because you are so much like me. We stand up always for what we know is good and right, no matter how we're persecuted for it. Thank you.
There's been a lot of comment this evening regarding notice that was sent. If we could have some comment from our Director of Planning and Council regarding notice requirements.
It's, when you look at it, and remind me how many 15 parcels. So when you look at 15 parcels, I believe section 12.09 indicates when there are 10 or fewer parcels, that's when you have to do the mailed notice. But if there's over 10 parcels, you have to do the notice per the publication in the paper. and I believe that notice was published in the paper. There is also will be notice of another public hearing at the city council level that people will receive as well, and will be able to come and then there'll also be notice of the actual request for a conditional use at the BZA that will be done. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the notice that went out to the individuals. I think they were probably doing something maybe even a little more than that was required, and I understand it was not in, it doesn't look like it was, but because of the number of parcels, I think that the planning office probably complied with what they needed to comply with. So, so I think that's where we are.
Can we verify that the acreage that was in the newspaper, was it 10 or was it 1,000? I didn't.
I couldn't tell you. I've never seen the notice myself. So.
Our legal notice did not include the acreage, so if the paper published a separate article, it wasn't on our behalf.
No acreage on, okay.
All right, do we have any last public comment?
Rick Roos, 1876 Michigan Road. You're impaneled to make a decision tonight. I think you've got enough information. Maybe it's not all due diligence, but you've heard enough anecdotal evidence to make a decision, yay or nay. To postpone it to another time in the hope that you're going to gain even more information, I think usurps the function of the commission. I think you need to make a decision, pass it on to the city council. They'll have another round of questions and answers, but I think you have enough information now, and I think you ought to make that decision now.
Jed Skillman, 1505 Michigan Road. My thought is so far is don't let legal minutia screw these people over. You know, just because you only need 10 people or 15 people to notify them, you should notify them. You're part of us. Notify. You should be looking out for our interests, their interests. Got it. So don't get lost in the minutia. Go the extra mile to make sure everybody's engaged in the thing. And also, I'll back up the previous speaker. Vote now. Go ahead and vote now.
All right, we'll give a last call for public comment. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you press it? Yep, thank you.
Paula Weatherby, 2685 West Deputy Pike Road. And I think we need environmental studies done on, there are bats in Clifty Falls State Park, and they are in the tunnels that they originally built for the railroad. And those tunnels, the cave-like tunnel is closed certain times of the year for those bats so that they don't get bacteria and they don't die. And I think that environmental studies need to be done about the bats and the habitat here in Jefferson County, because that hasn't even been mentioned, and that's a major thing. And I don't know, I don't see, we have all kinds of wildlife in our area, bobcats and deer, and we see them all the time, and try to preserve an area for them. You can't just push out wildlife. I mean, everybody, we've got to go to the future, we've got to progress. Well, that's not progressing. We can all live together. And as a panel, we live in this town and you represent us. Unfortunately, we live in the buffer zone and we can't vote on the mayor. We get no choice on anything like that. We are in the county and we don't get that vote, but yet you get to vote on how we're zoned and everything. So I think that you need to make a decision, and the decision, and also in the minutes, it said 20 days that we were supposed, the state of Indiana requires 10 days in your city of Madison, it requires 20 days notice, and we were not even given a week. And everything is tried to slip through just so people can make money. But the landowners, the people that own the property, we're not going to get anything except an ugly view. We live in the country and we want to see wildlife and trees. We do not want to see solar panels. Please vote no.
One last call for public comment. All right, so we will now move if there's any further comment from the Plan Commission. I would also remind the members of the Plan Commission that we are here tonight to decide on this as a land use and zoning matter. It's being brought before us for strictly a zoning change in light of the proposed project, however. So if there is no further discussion from the Plan Commission, I would entertain a motion, and our options for a motion on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, are either to a motion for a favorable recommendation to the City Council, a motion for an unfavorable recommendation, or would we need a motion for no recommendation?
I don't think you need a motion for no recommendation.
Okay.
But one thing I do want to say to, just for all the people out in the audience, this thing it will move on to the City Council, and whether it's favorable or unfavorable recommendation, that's fine, but it'll move on, and it'll move on to the City Council, and it'll be in the form of an ordinance. And that ordinance will go through a process of 3 readings. In that first reading, there will be really there's no public comment, there's no comment from the City Council or anybody else. So I'm just letting people know, so if they don't want to waste their time, you don't necessarily, that is just to introduce it to the City Council members, but there's no public comment at that time. All of the public comment and the public hearing will occur at the second reading. So it would be the second meeting after it's been referred to them. So just wanted everybody to know that, so.
All right, I will entertain a motion from the Plan Commission.
I make a motion that we send a unfavorable to the council.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
So we have a motion to provide an unfavorable recommendation to the City Council and a second. So in this case, a vote yes would be a vote in favor of an unfavorable recommendation. A vote no would be against the unfavorable recommendation. So we have a roll call vote, please.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Joel Storm,
Yes.
Patrick Tevenall,
Yes.
Jerry Ralston,
Yes.
Van Crafton.
Yes.
All right. So the Plan Commission has provided an unfavorable recommendation to the City Council. And from this point, as Council Jenner said, this will move to the City Council at one of our next meetings. It'll be introduced, and it'll be a 3-meeting process on that. So, is there any other business before the Plan Commission tonight? Hearing none, I'll
make a motion with adjourn.
second that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Good meeting. Good meeting, guys.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Uh-huh.
Larry Eagles.